Good evening and welcome to Solutionary TV. We are really excited tonight to be able to bring you pertinent information regarding our global issues in this amazing transitional society. We are bringing cutting-edge guests, we're bringing innovative strategies, and tonight is no different with our special guest this evening. And our guest this evening happens to be someone for whom I am a huge fan because I have been a regular follower as well as a product purchaser of her particular products because of their clean, green, and innovative implementation. Let me tell you a little bit about our guest this evening. Her name is Kristin Adams of Afterglow Cosmetics. Kristin is the founder and chief executive officer of Afterglow Cosmetics. Afterglow was founded in 2004 and was born out of Kristin's need for cosmetics that did not irritate her skin and a belief that women shouldn't sacrifice color and performance or quality when choosing a natural makeup. The company was a very early signer in the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics and maintains a natural-focused formulation philosophy. Her company's core focus has been to provide women with deep green natural cosmetics, free from many of the synthetics as much as possible, as well as common food irritants such as gluten or soy. She also happens to be cruelty-free. Just have to throw in that plug. Kristin is passionate about industry-wide definitions and third-party certifications to address current confusion in the market regarding quote-unquote natural and organic claims, for which there are many. Welcome, Kristin. We're so thrilled to have you tonight.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, let's get started with what really drew you, what motivated you to come up with your own company. I mean, this is nothing short of an enormous endeavor. Obviously, there was a lot of upfront costs. There was a lot of having to familiarize yourself and educate yourself about the industry. Give us the big why. What launched this for you?
Right. Well, originally I started by making the products for myself, and many women, mostly women who start making cosmetics for themselves, make skincare, but I actually started out with makeup because I found that the crux of my irritation and skin irritation, because I am so sensitive, happened to be because of the ingredients in makeup. And I simply couldn't, way back in 2004, couldn't find a makeup brand or even specific makeup products that addressed the needs that I had for free from specific ingredients. And at that time, right now it's fairly prevalent through the industry, even though there's not a lot of regulation or understanding about what specific claims mean. There is a bit more choice. Back then there was nothing, so I ended up making the products for myself.
Wow. And obviously, there was quite a bit of ramp-up time and a lot of time to think about how you wanted to differentiate yourself from the typical business model in your industry. Tell us a little bit about your business model, too. I know that you really came from a place that was meant to be a service as well as a product company, and even how you treat your employees. I mean, it's really kind of a vast concept. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Right. Well, it was a slow build. I started making the products for myself to heal my own skin issues and my own needs and my own concerns. And frankly, it started out of a spirit of play, because I come from a background in fine art. So mixing pigments and finding binders and playing with colors was really my passion, and it was play and it was joy. So it wasn't specifically to only heal and eat, it was also a lot of fun. So I started from that perspective and started sharing it with friends and family and slowly built it. I did have the opportunity in 2004 to be working for an internet hosting company at the same time that I was making this product. And that's, I think Amazon was only selling books at that point. So that was way back in the day. And I was working for this internet hosting company and decided, watching all of my clients, the first generation of internet marketers sell things online, I thought, just like with the makeup, that I can do this too. And I started selling the makeup online to begin with. Mm-hmm. It was just me and my server and my friends who were my tech support. And I was just amazed at the interest for natural cosmetics and natural products. It originally came from very niche groups of women that I didn't even know existed that started posting about Afterglow on message boards related to breast cancer survivors and related to women with severe allergies or fibromyalgia that were really looking to shift their lifestyle completely away from certain synthetic ingredients mostly. And my product fit the bill, so I immediately attracted a tribe of women that were really looking to step into something that was fairly uncommon at that point, which was finding not only food, but also lifestyle products that really fit every single aspect of what they were looking for to create.
Yes, and obviously there was an incentive on your end and an openness to really listen to your consumers and that niche following so that you could continue to meet their demands for excellence, not only in product quality, but again, the ethical aspects of what products they were willing to use. I know that when you came on the scene, the manufacturer that was assisting in the fulfillment of your products really had an enormous learning curve. In our conversations, you'd shared that it was kind of a learning curve for both of you to determine, can we substitute this ingredient for this? How can we stay true to cruelty-free, which I think was practically unheard of at that time and has only become maybe a little bit more better understood. Brushes that don't exploit the use of animals and, you know, and their natural coats. And we also have to look at what's gone on with the gluten epidemic. You know, it's gone from being an intolerance to people who just cannot have any gluten on their bodies or within their bodies. And your company answered the call. So tell us how you went about really listening to your consumer and your niche in such an innovative way that you were able to customize these products and create such an ardent following. It's very impressive.
That sounds so visionary.
That's the point.
When I look way back on the history of Afterglow, all the way back to 2004, in retrospect, it seems like the path makes sense. But really, I was just listening to exactly what I wanted in a product and listening to my customers and what they needed and really how they were looking to level up the products that they were interested in buying, and then trying to respond and listen to their motivations behind that to create a holistic message and a holistic product line. So often you'll see brands where they will push very heavily a specific category of products that's very natural, but then they'll have other products that's not natural. And my goal was for the Afterglow brand to be a brand that was something that you could trust from beginning to end, regardless of what product you were purchasing. You knew that it didn't have parabens, it didn't have bismuth oxychloride, you knew that everything was cruelty-free, that we had gone to extensive efforts to make sure that the entire line held the same amount of integrity. And when I first started making the products for myself, but I quickly realized that I could not do everything myself. Even though I often have the impulse to try to do everything myself because I'm so fascinated with every single aspect of everything from creation to delivery of the product and even the psychographics of the marketplace. But I teamed up with an amazing chemist who was also just starting at the same point and really was very interested in natural and organic products and ingredients and was fascinated by her own organic garden and approached it with the right emotion and heart and approached it with her heart. Mm-hmm. And that's where we started. And every time I threw something new at her, like now it has to be free of this, now it has to be cruelty free, she got on board with me, and we really had a beautiful partnership to figure out how we could do this. And even though we had all the best intentions to do this, we were still sourcing hundreds of cosmetic ingredients from many different companies that supplied these cosmetic ingredients that had no idea what to do when we asked them for a cruelty-free statement, saying that all the way back through the origin, creation of that raw material, like let's say the colorant or the waxes or the oils, at no stage in the process had it been tested on animals. And we demanded like this crazy level of integrity from our suppliers at every single level, mm-hmm. that I think we're the two of us together really set a different standard for at the level of the entrepreneur, not at the level of one of the the mega companies, but to demand a different level of excellence from the suppliers, all the way through the supply chain.
Right. Well, you had to have that level of accountability. Otherwise, you couldn't even deliver that once you had those products within your chemist and the manufacturer for fulfillment. You had to start with that level of demand and cleanliness. And this is really what we wanted to talk about tonight, is because we have an issue in our society and in the various industries for which we are all very dependent, in knowing that the food that we eat, the products that we put on our body, the products that we introduce into our households and share with our children really are what they are self-identifying, what they've labeled as. We know that a lot of things say natural. We know that a lot of things say organic. And really, we're looking to get into that rabbit hole, and we're glad you're in here with us, because you can chase it back down and be able to say, here's what it takes to get this on a label, and here's how things can maybe be mislabeled and how it can be confusing. Because if we're going to empower our particular viewers tonight to be educated consumers, they need to understand how to read labels appropriately and how to patronize those products and those companies, those manufacturers that are really giving them the purest and the highest quality, because there are such rampant issues with inflammation and sensitivities these days. So tell us a little bit about what it takes to source, and then also dealing with the third-party certification. And that might help our listeners know maybe some clues on what to look for in their own packaging.
Right. It actually is a rabbit hole. That is not a euphemism. And just to give a little bit of context and make this relevant to everyone, and I'm sure there are a lot of men that are watching this that might not think, makeup or cosmetics, that's not really my thing. I only use soap. That actually, even men throughout their day, when you look at your shampoo and your shaving cream and your soap and any creams that you might use, deodorant, right? That we are all exposing ourselves and our largest organ, which is our skin, to a lot of chemicals. And we have had such advancements in science to bring insane chemicals that really have incredible immediate effects on the body and the skin in a lot of different ways. Everything from nanotechnology to penetration enhancers, which will push the product and the cream deeper down through multiple layers of your skin to get it to plump up or get it to look healthier. But we need to think and be aware many steps ahead of the process, because we are absorbing those chemicals into our body. Many of them are bioaccumulative, and many of them... Explain that.
Help our listeners to understand what bioaccumulative means.
Right.
That it isn't just a one-time application, but rather a layered effect.
So bioaccumulative is kind of how it sounds. It's something that once it enters the body, instead of it passing through, like just think of food or even the supplement like vitamin C, which you take it and then you see it peed out. So that is something that processes through your body, your liver and your kidneys, and the rest of your body knows how to process it and metabolize it. Many ingredients and many things that we're being exposed to now through the blessing of science, for better or for worse, are being absorbed into our bodies, not only through our skin, but through our mouth, through breathing, and that's even breathing your cologne or your perfume or your hairspray, and they are accumulating or stacking up inside our bodies. This is at a microscopic level, so this isn't something like you're going to notice a bloat of this, but you can imagine that us as beings, we haven't evolved as rapidly as science has. And therefore, our system has not evolved to know how to identify a synthetic ingredient necessarily and pass it through the system and be like, oh, that's a synthetic ingredient. We don't need that anymore. Let's just pass it through the system. Right. It just kind of stores it away. And it stores it away in our fat cells more than anything. So they're lipid soluble. A lot of synthetic ingredients come from petroleum. So a lot of what we are absorbing on some level is a petroleum derivative that is then bioaccumulating and accumulating as a lipid-soluble or fat-soluble substance that is staying within us. And to be at our highest and our best, with so many unknown diseases that are rampant right now, from chronic inflammation to cancer, we don't know the exact cause of it, and we are bombarded with so many things that my feeling is if you can just find things that are just as good and much more natural, that's where you should start, and contribute to motivating the industry as a whole to move in a direction of finding and more regenerative and sustainable models, all the way from agriculture all the way through the end products that we use. I went on such a rant that I don't think I answered all of your question.
No, it was good. It was good, because the truth is we have to start with educating before we can demonstrate what solutions are already available. And there is a huge learning curve on this particular topic. This is about voting with our dollars. And this is such a broad topic, and we're only going to narrow it in so much that we're talking about the fact that the things that we can't live without, we need to eat. And we've covered that somewhat in some past shows, and we'll continue to evolve that. But there is so much around focusing on what we're exposing our bodies to, our homes, and then all of those that we share our homes with, our children, our animals, even the environment, the aerosol environment in the air, can become a constant toxic space that can circulate back on us again and again. And there are certain ingredients that a lot of us aren't even aware are in products, and there are a lot of products that are not properly labeled. We all are starting to notice that the real big corporations that have been putting products out since our, teenage years or early childhood, going back, 30, 40, 50 years, are now taking on natural looking labels. And we could assume when we pick it up and it says organic, and instead of being in hot pink, neon flashy packaging, now it's kind of in a muted sage, and it's got a little garden scene on it. And many of us will just pick it up and go, hey, this is better. And if you look at the back of it, it's still made by one of these big corporations that hasn't necessarily amended the ingredient list. It hasn't necessarily changed its processes. It's cleverly changed its packaging. So when we push a little bit harder on you tonight, Kristin, please just know we really want to know what to look for with brands. We want to know what keywords to look for if we're going to be empowering everyone to know how to vote more educated with their dollars, to know that they are not continuing this bioaccumulation. So let's talk about the organic issue, the cruelty-free, the gluten-free. I believe at one point you have kosher products as well. So let's just kind of touch on a few of these so that we can help our consumers that are dealing with natural products know what to look for based on their own current health needs.
Well, you're right. First of all, we are incredibly visual creatures, and we're also very motivated by texture and smell. So if something smells like watermelon and has natural packaging or something, we immediately are provoked to think it's natural, and we really do need to dig deeper. Our science, our ability to synthesize reality has come at every single level of technology to a point where it's almost hard to discern what is natural from what is not natural. And often only our bodies, our internal knowing and our internal metabolizing of that product knows if it was truly natural, and I think often that might be too late. So it is difficult, and it's also even more challenging in the United States than it is in Europe. And I use Europe as, even though there are many other countries in the world, the European Union is a great counterpoint, and I'll also include Canada in there because they're a little bit more strict. The European Union and Canada are great counterpoints to the United States as far as regulation around natural and organic claims, and regulation around what you can have in your product and what you are required to say is in your product on a label.
Right.
The European Union, let's go back all the way to the 40s when the United States FDA was created. It was created to protect the population of the United States as consumers, and it has a lot of responsibility in many different areas. And in the United States, it focuses very heavily on the pharmaceutical industry. It doesn't focus a lot on cosmetics, and that's a real shock to almost everyone I talk to in the United States. They really have very little regulation around anything related to the safety of cosmetics, and that's topical products that are not considered over-the-counter drugs or cannot be classified as pharmaceuticals. So that's any of your lotions, potions, creams, and makeup. They don't have any regulation. There is not even a pre-market approval for cosmetics with the FDA in the United States. That means that anyone can throw something in a bottle and stick it on Amazon and put something, say it's natural, put half of the ingredients in there, only put 2 of the ingredients on the ingredient label, and no one would be the wiser, which is wild.
Is this why certifications, third-party certifications are so important, Kristin? Do you feel like they really have the veracity that they are purporting to have, and obviously something that you've chosen to abide by in your labeling and packaging, and in your ability to have a third-party oversight give you that certification?
Right. Certifications are very helpful, and we do use certifications to distinguish us. So in the same way that you can't tell if a product is safe or natural just by looking at the ingredient label, because there's no third party in the United States that is a United States certification that will say that that was third party verified. The same thing, like anyone can stick a bunny on their packaging and say that it's cruelty free. Unless you have been audited and are part of the Leaping Bunny certification, PETA's great, but it doesn't audit. The Leaping Bunny certification, you don't really know if the product is that of the company you're patronizing is cruelty free. So back to Europe. Europe, in their quest for, Europe really approaches the consumers from a very different perspective than the United States. They approach their consumer base and protecting their public in a much more precautionary way than the United States. So just as, and that's very similar to the spirit of this country versus the spirit of Europe in a lot of ways. Like we are the Wild West. We are still the Wild West. If anyone wants to argue that, they will have a big argument against them, because in many respects in the United States, there's very little regulation to put something out into the marketplace in comparison with the European Union, where when we entered the European Union market and started selling in France, we had to send each one of our products and their not only the ingredient list as was shown on the label, but actually the formula with the percentages of every single ingredient in that product to 3 separate laboratories to be independently verified.
Wow.
And then that went to the certifying body, the government body in France. And just to give you a comparison, in the United States, there are about 12,500 cosmetic ingredients that are often used in cosmetics, which is a huge number. So if anyone thinks they can memorize this number of cosmetic ingredients or red flag ingredients, most of them have never been tested for safety. Most of them have come on the market in the last 20 years as scientific innovations. And since there is no pre-market approval for cosmetic ingredients or the final product, the FDA has only has evaluated very few of them and has only banned, of those 12,500 ingredients, 11 ingredients. Yeah. So 11, maybe the rest of the ingredients are just fine. That might be perfectly fine. But if you skip over the pond and look at how many ingredients that the European Union has banned, take a guess.
I don't even dare take a guess, but I do know that they have expediency that we do not have in terms of oversight. So I would imagine at least a couple hundred, perhaps.
That is very conservative.
Okay.
They have banned to date, I think, and it might have gone up, but 1,328 cosmetic ingredients of those 12,500. Those are the same ingredients. They're all looking at the same ingredients.
Wow.
The US FDA, 11, the European Union, 1,328. And a lot of that is because they come from a very different approach, which is a precautionary approach, which is, if we think that these ingredients there may be some red flags, and while we don't have a conclusive double-blind study to prove that they are as bad as
Right.
We might think they are. We are going to hold off on approving them completely.
So they have more of a when in doubt policy.
Right.
First, do no harm. If there's any question, if there's been any sensitivities, I'm sure there's a reporting body on that. So good. I mean, we would like to know that our government agencies are advocating more for us. I think that we as concerned citizens are finding out more and more that between the food and the beverage and the makeup and medicine and the third leading cause of death in the United States is death by medicine, because we have so many pharmaceuticals and surgeries that are botched and things that we just don't realize how fragile these bodies are that we have. Just about everyone knows someone close to their lives that is either struggling with cancer or has passed with cancer, or maybe that has even been able to survive and come back into full health. But there were a lot of changes that had to take place because of encountering such an enormous medical obstacle in their lives. We have to take a look at what was the contributing factors to my coming into this level of ill health. And we know that we didn't get there without there being cause. It's not just symptomology, and I was struck with, there is cause. Right. So when the organ that we're referring to now, this is about makeup, but it's more than that. It's anything that we put on our bodies, and it's even ingestible. As I believe you shared with me in prior conversations, we're eating a lot of this makeup. Can you tell our clients, our clients, you're all our clients tonight, tell our listeners, tell our viewers how much is ingested. I know you have some stats on that, and I think that's another important piece for them to be aware of. Yeah,
it is said that the average woman ingests about 4 pounds of lipstick in lip products in a lifetime. So recently there was a European study, because they take their claims very seriously. There was a European study that actually studied this a little bit more, just to see if this was in the ballpark of fact. And a lot of times we think that even the skin is an impenetrable barrier, but it's not. The skin is porous, and it is absorbing a certain amount of ingredients. Our mouths, what we eat, when we put on a beautiful red lipstick and then we have an amazing meal, where's that lipstick going? It's not all on your wine glass. Some of it you're ingesting, and while those are I like to say you're microdosing yourself. But as we live longer and longer and longer, you can imagine how much we're microdosing ourselves. And for me, when I talk about makeup, and the kernel of passion that I come from isn't really about makeup specifically. I love playing with colors, and makeup is play, and it's fun, but really it's a point of conversation that can spark awareness about what we are moving through as a culture and as individuals and as souls right now, and what we are absorbing. Everything from the stuff we put on our body, to the environments we walk into, to the people we allow ourselves to be surrounded by. What you are absorbing at every single level, including the companies you are patronizing and what they are promoting and what you are absorbing through their positions on animal cruelty, on human rights, it's now or never. Right. And if your point of awakening and awareness comes with makeup, because it starts with the passion, that is the seed for you to start seeing everything else with the same amount of awareness. Wow, that was so powerful. Thank you for making that as macrocosmic as you did, because it is so far-reaching. It's very spatial, isn't it, Kristin? It starts with, how am I taking care of the density that I refer to as my body, without recognizing that that alone is an epic feat of education and understanding and discipline, especially if we've had the health issues. We realize that inflammation across the board in children and adults is a huge issue, but we have to take that deeper and, to your point,
inflammation is light noise, and it is chaos and static in our lives. It's too much technology. It's too much stimulation and energy coming at us, and there needs to be a lot more silence and consciousness in just about every choice we're making. This is not a small topic. It's really quite expansive. I thank you for making that point and bringing it back to a place of, again, educating, always wanting to educate our viewers. If they're going to use any type of product that they bring into their homes and they put on their children, or are going to, adorn themselves with, what would you have them look for other than a little bunny and attractive, sagey mauve packaging with the word natural on it? Help them know how to look for some things, because they can't memorize those 12,500 ingredients and know that only 11 may or may not have had, enough negativity warranted. Tell them what to look for in particular, and then let's talk about how they can vote with their dollars in another aspect of this conversation after you've given them a little bit more concrete background on certification.
Okay, well, I'll first go from the cruelty-free and ethical standpoint, because this is the easiest and most clear-cut way for me to approach this, and then I'll move into ingredients that you should look for and be aware of, not only in your cosmetics, but also and cosmetics includes shampoo and conditioner and deodorant. So this applies to every adult and most teenagers, and even your babies.
Yeah. Febreze in your home,
right?
Sheet, air sheets in your dryer. That it's everywhere, isn't it, Kristin?
Right. And so to start with the cruelty-free certification, there are two in the United States well-known bodies that are huge cruelty-free and animal rights advocates, and one of them is PETA, and the other one is Leaping Bunny. PETA is very well known, and you'll see the little PETA bunny that will normally say cruelty-free. It looks a little bit more they both look cartoonish.
How is that spelled, Kristin?
PETA. So okay. PETA, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. They've been around a very long time. They've had, they started out very militant, but have really, in some ways, embraced the larger population to spread this message even further about looking out for animal welfare. But the other one, which is Leaping Bunny, is supported by the Humane Society, by the Anti-Vivisection Society out of the UK. It's a little bunny that's kind of jumping. And if you go to leapingbunny.org, you'll see that one. There are some stars around it. And the difference between the two is they both come from the same place in terms of drawing a hard line as to what is right and not right as far as animal treatment, and the use of animals in products, and the use of animals to test products. And that's not just bunnies. A lot of the testing that's done for cosmetics is done with beagles. It's done with dogs. It's done with house pets. It's not, and while rabbits are house pets, a lot of times that's very far removed from most people's awareness, because some people also eat rabbits. So Leaping Bunny audits companies. So they will go into your books, and I know this very personally because they actually audited Afterglow. They came in, with very little warning, they sat down and they looked at our accounting system to see every single order we had made to every single compounding company and raw material supplier to make sure that we had a cruelty-free statement from all the way back to the origin of every single ingredient in that product.
Wow.
And that is an unprecedented level of granularity as far as confirming that truly these products are cruelty-free. So if you really want to be ethical in that perspective, go there.
Okay, great. So we've covered cruelty-free. I know that for those that are looking to get out of gluten or even the kosher, just real briefly, because I want to cover so much tonight, tell them what certifications to look for.
So, because we attracted such a highly sensitive customer base, that a lot of them say, like, literally, I can only use your product. I cannot use any other products out there in the market. And they started asking if our products were gluten-free. And actually, since all the women in my family are allergic to, are celiacs or allergic to gluten and gluten-free, including myself, My mom was the first one that told me, you should start advertising that your products are gluten-free, which I thought was crazy. But once we started advertising it, it resonated with so many women that were so happy to know that they could check that off their list as good. I don't have to worry about my makeup having gluten, which a lot of makeup does have gluten. And while gluten is not a problem for a lot of people, it is a contaminant and a problem for many women, especially because it's found in lip products and they're ingesting it, and that's a gastrointestinal issue. So we kind of span the choosing more natural ingredients, eliminating synthetic and petrochemical derived ingredients, and we also try as much as we can to eliminate common allergens that are actually also natural. So that's gluten and soy from our product line, specifically because we are listening to our customers.
Yes.
And also, most gluten is derived from a GMO source, so it has a lot of unsavory aspects to that process, and I don't want to support it.
Right. And you do have an organic label, or things being at least wildcrafted, so that would eliminate there being glyphosates, correct? You're not going to be working with those types of products.
To close the loop on the gluten, we're actually certified by the GFCO. So they audit our facilities, they audit our purchasing books, they do random tests of our products. So we're tested and audited from a lot of different perspectives. And then from the organic perspective, our products are made in a USDA certified facility, which means that to maintain that certification, they cannot introduce into the box that is that manufacturing facility certain ingredients, or they'll lose their certification. But the sticky part is that makeup is not an organic product, because makeup is, by its very nature, color. And color is a pigment, and pigment comes from the earth and rocks and minerals, and that was never living, so it can never be certified as living and growing.
Okay.
So the only, weirdly, the USDA will still not, and this is probably just because they like to stay back from most things, the USDA will not, and they have made this statement, certify cosmetics. If you ever see a USDA label on a final finished cosmetic product, that means that it was certified as a food under the food standard. Many people don't know this.
Okay.
This isn't common knowledge, but if you go to the USDA website, it's clearly out there in the interwebs. But it is certified as a food, which means if it's carrying that label, the green USDA label, it is at least 95% organic ingredients, which means that it's probably a cream or a body oil or something like that, because as soon as you introduce the required ingredients for a cosmetic to not separate like Italian dressing, or have enough color to be a makeup, like my lipstick, for example, is between 20 and 30% pigments. So even if this is natural and eco-certified pigments, which we do have, it's not growing, so it can never be certified USDA, which means it can never be certified under the food standard, which means we're kind of stuck explaining a lot about how natural the products are. But if you can find a company who can explain that to you, or explains that on their website, you know you've got a company that knows what they're talking about and is likely staying in integrity through their whole product line.
Okay.
So.
And I want to pause you right there, because this has been a growing consumer awareness, especially in the United States, because we don't have some of the same advocacy through our government regulatory agencies that you've mentioned. Maybe the European Union is more exacting about. I know that you've had your products and a potential launch in China, and that there was a great deal of certification and pre-qualification you had to go through. So let's just talk about the United States. We've had some companies that have been introduced here that have become staples. They become family staples that you could get at the health food store, at a Whole Foods up until recently. And I want to talk about some of them, or they've had their own, particular brick and mortar. Body Shop is one that has existed for some time. Kiehl's has existed for quite some time out of New York. I'm just going to hit a few of these and then circle back. Seventh generation product line that has to do with, cleaning products and household products. Bare Minerals has had a big heyday as being a more natural type of product for again, makeup and mostly fine-tuned towards women's, facial products and hair. And Burt's Bees, which, is more of a family product line. It's got everything to do from, baby bath to, lip balm. We know that a lot of these companies have been bought out. Now, what our viewers probably don't know is when their favorite brands have been purchased by a larger mega corporation. And we're going to hand this over to Kristin in just a minute, but please be aware, when a company gets big enough, there appears to be a trend that a mega corporation either wants to buy you out and find at what point you are willing to go with the highest bidder, or potentially overregulate you from a position of power where they make it harder and harder for some of these smaller businesses to have the level of efficacy, purity, discipline, and excellence that Kristin's talking about with what she has held herself and her company accountable for Afterglow Cosmetics. So let's just play with some of these brands, starting with Body Shop, for instance. Kristin, who now owns Body Shop, since they are not independently owned any longer?
The Body Shop was bought out quite a long time ago by L'Oreal.
Okay.
And so whenever a small independent company of most kinds, this is not just cosmetics, is purchased by a larger company who is also a publicly traded company, the motivations for what they do and why they do it change. So the original driving force of a company that is ethical and natural, and I'm not saying that companies that are publicly traded aren't necessarily ethical and natural, but companies that create a really rabid following because of a specific position they have about being ethical and natural, and the founder of the Body Shop was exactly that. She was dogmatic about her ethics and what she put in her products, and and who she supported and why throughout the world, and her packaging. And when the company gets bought out, that's all up for grabs. And so I think it's really fascinating. I mean, I feel like there's always something, nature abhors a vacuum, and the natural cosmetic industry also abhors a vacuum. And so if that company, or if a natural company like the Body Shop or Burt's Bees, for example, continues to be assimilated by their larger overlord, another company like Afterglow and many other companies that are Afterglow sites that are coming now, we will fill that void to respond to customers. So what happens often is a company that's bought out, usually the first thing that happens is formulas change. So the very reason why these companies were often patronized is because they had a very specific way of formulating their products, without parabens, without phthalates, without polyethylene glycol, without petrolatum, without synthetic fragrance. And this was part of their philosophy, their ethics, their ethos, without testing on animals. And when they get absorbed by the larger company has other plans. They already source ingredients from specific places. They source these ingredients in bulk quantities that are unfathomable to small customer bases. Like to give you an example, that's not cosmetics. I think it was said once by the beer company Adams, that it was a small Samuel Adams, which is not even that small. They said that Budweiser spills more beer on the ground when they manufacture their beer than Samuel Adams even makes in a year.
Wow. Okay.
So the scale, the difference that we're looking at is tremendous. Their motivations and how they look at a cosmetic formula, or how they look at a consumer product in general, is very different from a small mom and pop, a small company, like even the Body Shop or Aveda or Burt's Bees are. Even at a $250 million, that's a small company.
Sure.
So these larger companies like the Estee Lauders and the L'Oreals and the Procter & Gamble's of the world, they need shelf life of the product to be significantly longer. They have different motivations when they look at that product and say, all right, that was an amazing product. It sold really well. But how does it fit into our model? And then they change it to fit their model, which means that instead of the shelf life, like the shelf life being 3 or 5 years, that shelf life needs to be 7 years or 10 years. It needs to be tremendous, so much longer. It needs to withstand hotter environments. It needs to withstand more unforgiving warehousing. That means that they need to put a lot more preservative that's been banned,
right,
potentially banned, and a lot more harsh ingredients potentially in these products to get them to be stabilized. So what is important to them and what was important to that small natural company's original customer base might not be compatible. So the game is awareness. It's all about awareness.
Right.
In every level of your life, not just cosmetics. So when you look at your cosmetic brand and you are a ride or die, intensely loyal follower of this brand, be aware if they're bought out and watch it. It may change and it may not.
And that's pretty easy to determine too, isn't it, Kristin? If you want to follow your brand, you go to their website and you can do a little bit of R&D, can't you, to a little bit of forensic investigation to determine who they're actually owned by. I think at one point you were going to make a suggestion for how our consumers can find out, because just kind of coming back to this, Seventh Generation was bought out by, is it Clorox recently, or was it Unilever? I'm trying to remember.
I believe it was Unilever, and Burt's Bees was bought out by Clorox a few years ago.
And you just hear that and you go, whoa, wait a minute. Obviously, the mission statement and the vision of Burt's Bees did not originally align with Clorox. And as they grow and as they develop and as they create a huge popularity and following, enough that Clorox wants to buy them out, and we talk about this difference in values, those that maybe once found that, gosh, that lip balm always worked for me, or I never noticed my child have a rash when I did, that baby soap, they would need to be open and aware that if the product appears to have changed, if their body's experience with these products appears to have become more sensitive, or there is any differentiation, go and find out who owns that company. It may not be directed by its original founders and intenders. And so getting back to voting with dollars, Kristin, let's talk a little bit about the fact that if we are going to really know our product and be a firm devoter of it, why is it so important that we buy from those companies that are deep green, that are clean and ethical? I know your lip balm. I love Kristin's products. I'm just going to speak this right now. That's the only makeup that I wear, and I find again and again I don't ever have a reaction to the makeup, and I mean that's from the eyelashes, all the way down to the skin and the lips. Everything has been a really wonderful treat and reprieve for my skin to be able to use the products. But I know I'm going to pay 2 to 3 times more for your product. Okay, it's fair to say, because you've sourced it this impeccably. Help our consumers understand why it's going to cost so much. Yes, you do the homework, and yes, you have to be impeccable with the sourcing, but why are these deep green products, or these ingredients so much more expensive? So they understand they're really investing in their health.
They're more expensive for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is that we are sourcing significantly more expensive ingredients. So even though my product isn't certified organic, every single botanical ingredient that I use that I can source USDA organic, I do, because I want to patronize and support that kind of agriculture and that vision of the world. And I also don't want my products to be contaminated with pesticides. So I have a lot of motivation for that personally, and those are the kind of products that I want to use. So if I'm creating my own world here, and I'm making products that I want to use, that if I could, I'm creating my dream products, and they are more expensive. The ingredients are more expensive. The processing is more expensive. We make even our cosmetics, our makeup is made by a much more manual process than a $2 million lipstick machine that L'Oreal has. So, because that's the level that they're playing at, they're in a totally different stratosphere. But when they are creating a similar lipstick, they're not sourcing USDA organic ingredients, and they're not paying for the certifications, which are very costly relative to the amount of products. And they're also running 200 or 300,000 units at a time, and we are running 1,000 units at a time, 2,000 units at a time.
Right.
So volume changes the game completely. Also, since our products are so natural, they're perishable. We can't run 5,000 units and stick them in the garage. Well, we don't stick them in a garage, but you know what I'm saying? Like, just put them wherever and sell them for years to come, because they have been preserved into oblivion.
Right.
They are much more perishable. They are living. They come from living. And if you are sensitive to vibration, you will feel this in the products. They resonate at a different level.
Right.
So that it's a lot of the has to do with volume. It has to do with the same thing that they purchase costs them significantly less, and therefore everything costs us more. So we do fight the good fight.
Yeah.
As I would say.
And if I can interrupt on that level, we are learning now as American consumers to be a lot more aware of something that those in Europe and Australia and other areas of the world have known for a long time. Food shouldn't be cheap, and nothing that we put on our bodies should be cheap, because how we as Americans have come to pay for it with the levels of obesity and disease and chronic inflammation and cancer in this country has demonstrated we're still going to pay for it. We're going to pay for it in our health care. We're going to pay for it on the back end. And this is no exception. Aluminum and mercury have been known to be stored in the brain. We know that carcinogens and toxins get stored in the joints and in the fat. You've already mentioned that our bodies try to take it as insular as possible and store it in the fat cells. Our bodies can only handle so much microdosing, believing that, oh, it's just one more lipstick or one more lip gloss, or it's just another, deodorant with heavy aluminum in it. We are microdosing, and we will pay for it in one form or another, instead of having to pay for it in our health care or our surgeries, or in anything that is looking to compensate for our lackadaisical lifestyle and hoping that the cheapest product or the cheapest food is going to suffice. If we just are a bit more mindful, right, Kristin? If we're paying a little bit more attention to really the brands that we can trust, the ones that are typically owned in-house, the ones that are held with a mission statement and the level of efficacy, we're going to have an overall blessing in how much toxicity we're bringing into our lives. And how well we're living at this point.
You're right, I agree. And it doesn't, it's a very holistic, every time you purchase a product, you are engaging in a complete life cycle dance, let's call it. You have supported everything that came before it and everything that's coming after it. And the buck does not stop with you when you put that product on your skin. When you throw away that container, what happens to that container? When you wash those products off of your face, those petroleum-based products or products with microbeads, so that was a recent issue with these scrubby beads that allowed you to exfoliate the skin on your face. They were made with synthetic microbeads that were washing off the body into the sewer system, into the water table, and they were finding them on the bottoms of lakes and rivers.
Yeah.
They were polluting at an astronomical level, and they were very small microbeads. They're in the process of being banned right now. But what damage has already been done?
This is that triple bottom line concept, isn't it, Kristin?
Exactly. And most people like cheap and fast. I'm not as dog. I mean, everyone has their moment. I talk about toxins, but I have a margarita every once in a while. So awareness is the first thing. If you make aware choices that honor everything that came before you and everything that came after you, most of the time, if most of us did that, we would live in a very different world now.
Yes.
Even if every once in a while you indulged in cheap and fast, which everyone does. It's human nature. We have to do that sometimes. Cheap and fast and maybe even a little toxic. But it's what you do most of the time that counts. And it's also the awareness that you do something with that is also incredibly important, that you are present with your decisions and not avoiding looking at the consequences of them.
How do we get our viewers aware of where to find your products? Share your website and maybe talk about some of the work that you do real briefly. We're down to the last few minutes. I know that you've been asked as an expert on various regulatory conferences. So Kristin's really in the know on this. She's all about voting with the dollars and understanding where those dollars are going. Kristin, tell them about your websites.
My website is afterglowcosmetics.com, and I do have a page on that website. If you look at the drop down in the brand philosophy called our no-go list. So that list is a little bit too long for me to talk about on here, but if you look at that list, it says every single ingredient that we don't use and why, and what that ingredient is, and then where it's found. A lot of these ingredients that we don't use are also found in a lot of natural products that ride a line between sometimes using synthetic ingredients and sometimes using natural ingredients and calling themselves fairly natural. Right. So this is where I draw the line. You need to decide where you draw the line, but this will at least give you a baseline to inform yourself. And on my blog, which you can find from afterglowcosmetics.com, there's a blog post called Who Really Owns Your Favorite Independent Cosmetic Company? If you want a more comprehensive list of who owns what, just for giggles. And to be aware, you can check that out. And at the end of this, well, actually November 1st, I'll be speaking in New York City at the Cosmetic Compliance Summit. This is an industry event where everyone from Estee Lauder to Abercrombie to L'Oreal, all the big guys, and a lot of smaller and medium-sized players all get together and talk about worldwide regulatory issues. And I talk about my talk will be called Beyond Organic, what your most natural cosmetic consumer is looking for.
Oh, wow. Wow. So, I mean, this is just so exciting, and it's such a big topic, and there was no way to cover all of this in an hour. Kristin has a huge depth of wisdom on this topic, and she's obviously very, very focused on educating her consumers and educating those even at this larger, high regulatory government agency and mega corporation level. And being hypervigilant. Viewers, this is what it's about. We want you to live well. We want you to live healthy. We know that bringing guests like this on the show are going to give you more information. Education is key, and then use that education and take it to the store, take it to your web shopping. This is going to make all the difference in the quality of life and the sustainability and regenerative future that we are all looking forward to and getting on board with together. Kristin, thank you for joining us tonight. It has been such a powerful pleasure having you here.
Likewise.
And you have so much wisdom. And I just want to say to our viewers, if you are enjoying Solutionary TV, if you're enjoying these really innovative guests that are being featured here, if you enjoy the content and you want more content, please go to www.solutionarytv.com. Be one of our patrons. Be one of our sponsors. We are happy to have you even for $2 a month. Buy our station manager a cup of coffee. Allow us to be able to continue to get this content out to you. If you go to the sponsorship link, we would be thrilled to know that we are building a following that we can continue to serve, we can continue to deliver to. And remember, it really is up to us. We are the solution. Thank you and good night.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.